Hello again. Let's take a look today at the Imperial Presidency. Take a quick review of it. What we should take away from this classic reading, pardon, by Arthur Schlesinger. All right, let me put the review up here, and there we go. The Imperial Presidency. You can see it's written during the Vietnam War era by Arthur Schlesinger, and he is a friend, he is a confidant of the Kennedy White House. He's an accomplished historian, an accomplished writer, but he does have a bias going in. He's going to love everything that the Kennedys do, and he's going to question things that other presidents do, whether they be Democrat or Republican. Why? Because they're not a Kennedy. Okay? All right. Where do we get the Imperial Presidency? Yeah, the reading points out that the Imperial Presidency was born out of foreign policy. So there's this permanent fear from World War II, from the nuclear war era, from the Cold War, that says we might not be here tomorrow, that things really are as bad as they seem. So when people get scared, they want somebody to protect them. They want the president to protect them. So your basic thesis on the reading is that the president has assumed powers that constitutionally ought not belong to him. They ought to belong to the legislative branch of government, aka Congress, and especially in the area of foreign policy, and even more specifically in the area of war making. Now, why is the president able to do this? Because there is a vacuum of power. The early 1900s, late 1800s, political parties ruled the day. There's a nice looking Tammany Hall man right there. And basically, people got their politics from their families, from their political parties, and there wasn't much straying from that. You were either a Democrat or a Republican, and that's the way you rolled. So there's a great amount of power with that, a great amount of control. When the power of political parties recedes or wanes, that's a nice word, then the president steps in and assumes that power. Okay, we start with FDR, as we do a lot of times in AP Gov. He fundamentally changes the way the president works with the economy, the way the president takes over the domestic agenda of the United States, and basically says that now the president and his party, his agenda, are in charge of the social welfare of America. Not your local folks, but the president is in charge. The Imperial Presidency just got bigger. Next, we have JFK, and this has a high focus on the Cuban Missile Crisis because Schlesinger points this out as a case study of how to do things right. There was a great threat. There was a need for secrecy. There was a need to move quickly. All this had to happen. And Schlesinger argues that Kennedy did this. He did this masterfully. He didn't operate solely by himself. He had close advisors, but yet he did things perfectly. Okay, so when he does things perfectly, it means that only he does things perfectly. That was never meant to be a blueprint for future presidents, but future presidents use it as a blueprint, okay? Because once you get power, you tend to want to keep it. Here is President Johnson, or at least the top of his head. We kind of share a similar hairline there. This is him sitting in the Oval Office as reports from Vietnam come back on troop deaths. And so Schlesinger argues that he basically kept things secret. He lied to the American people about how Vietnam was going, about the fact that we were winning the war when we weren't. And so that blueprint, which should not have been used, was grabbed by LBJ, who's a Democrat, and used in Vietnam. Of course, he's going to look at Nixon, who looks rather imposing there, pointing at you, and say that he messed up the Imperial Presidency also. Nixon was very secretive. Nixon did cover up the White House scandal, and so he did go ahead and take those attributes that Kennedy used so well and say, no, there really wasn't that much of a threat going on. There really wasn't the need for secrecy, even though Nixon thought there was. Schlesinger says there really wasn't. So now he is going to be the one that really kind of explodes the Imperial Presidency and leads to its downfall, because he is going to be the president ultimately to resign because of Watergate. All right, that's a quick review. If you go ahead and look at what we have there, I think the important things, again, to emphasize with the Imperial Presidency are, why did we have it? Okay, born out of foreign policy. The power vacuum created by the demise of political parties is a big deal. It is basically a stealing of constitutional powers, especially the power to declare war, and then we just track the presidents. Kennedy operated well. He did things perfectly because they had to be done in that unique historical situation, whereas the other presidents did not. They took that as a blueprint, and they should not have done that.